Insufferable, stubborn, spiteful. These were words that described Hwayên Ellen. Well, at least Gakushu Asano described her that way. The strawberry blonde stared at the girl who stood at his desk, holding 2 slips of 1,000 yen paper bills. She looked like she needed sleep. "You dropped this yesterday." Gakushu stared at her like she had 3 eyes. The two have never had the need to speak before. The only time they did was when she took his order. They never really wanted to speak to each other. "Does she not want the money?" "I didn't. That was your tip." Hwayên narrowed her eyes at him. Why would he leave 2,000 yen as a tip? What is his ulterior motive? What the hell does he want with me? If it wasn't obvious enough, she did not trust him one bit. "Aren't you supposed to share that with your other coworkers?" Gakushu questioned. Hwayên scowled. "Yeah, but I assumed you left it there on accident." "Why would I do that?" "Because generous isn't a word I'd use to describe you," Hwayên responded. Gakushu returned her scowl. Deep down, he didn't really know why he decided to leave 2,000 yen as a tip. He just felt like it at the moment. It's not like it would have made that much of a difference to him, so he didn't see the problem. "If you don't want it, then just give it to your coworkers," Gakushu stated, looking back to his notebook. "I'm sure they'd appreciate it more than you are at the moment." Hwayên could feel her blood boil. "Are you calling me ungrateful?" "By the looks of it, you are." The nerve of this guy! Hwayên shoved the paper bills back into her pocket and clenched her fist. Her nails were digging into the palms of her hands. She was about to explode at him until their teacher walked in. Hwayên was annoyed, sure, but she never liked making a scene over things. She quietly fumed back to her seat. Hwayên fell back on her bed. It was her day off from work, but she had just come back from the sets to sneakily put the 2,000 yen into a tip jar like it should have been. She was worn out and tired. Recently, she had been coming home late because of her closing shifts at sets. She had really cut back on hours. She turned onto her side and closed her eyes. She let out a groan and checked her phone. Her expression softened when she realized it was her grandmother calling. She picked up and answered. "Hi, Grandma," she said with a tired smile.
"Hi, sweetie. Are you all right?"
her grandmother asked worriedly.
"You sound like you need sleep."
"I'm okay," she reassured.
"How many hours are you working nowadays?"
the old lady scolded.
"While I'm happy that you're getting good grades and maintaining a well-paying job, you need to get some more rest. Please cut back on hours."
"Grandma, I'll be fine," Hwayên reassured. "It's nothing I can't handle."
"Why don't you try talking to that soulmate of yours?" her grandmother suggested. "I want you to be happy, and I personally would like to meet this Asano."
Hwayên's face contorted into annoyance and disgust. Her grandmother and her aunt had always tried to encourage her to speak to her strawberry blonde soulmate. They always told her to try and give them a chance. However, she didn't want to. "Grandma, I've told you before."
I know.
The old lady sighed.
"I'm just saying, it might not hurt to try."
"If I try, then that means Asano has to try too, and I highly doubt that he wants to." Hwayên rolled her eyes. "I'm honestly fine with just staying single."
"Don't say that."
Her grandmother frowned.
"You make it sound like having a soulmate is a curse."
"When your soulmate is Asano and fate decides to step in, then yes, it is," Hwayên thought.
"In any case,"
her grandmother continued,
"just make sure to get some rest, okay? Don't overwork yourself."
"I won't, Grandma." Hwayên smiled. "I promise." The two talked for a good hour. It made Hwayên's heart feel warm, knowing that her grandmother cared about her.
"Take care, sweetie,"
her grandmother warned. "I will. I love you, Grandma." Hwayên smiled.
"Love you too, hon,"
the old lady replied.
"Bye-bye."
"All right, bye." Once she hung up, Hwan fell back on her bed once more. She shut her eyes until... Psst. At first, Hwan ignored the voice. Psst. Fate, can you leave me alone, just for once? She roared, abruptly sitting up. You should probably quiet down before your neighbors call you out. Fate hummed in her reflection. What do you want now? She exasperatedly asked. I really don't want to deal with your stupidity. Insult me all you want. I've heard worse. Fate triumphantly grinned. From who? Gamblers? Ah. Anyways, Fate sang, you should listen to your grandmom. Why do I feel like you somehow did something to get her say that? Hwan deadpanned. Actually, I'm not the one who controls personalities and what they say. Life does that. Fate blurted out. What do you... My point is... Fate interrupted. She raised an eyebrow. Give your soulmate a try. Hwan picked up a large t-shirt. I think I'm good. Fate sighed. You're just tired. Think about it when you have energy. Okay, Hwan sarcastically sang and draped the t-shirt over the mirror. That ought to do. I can still communicate with you, you know. And instead of replying, Hwan collapsed onto her bed and fell asleep. The sun was setting as Gakushu stared out of the window of his car. The lights reflected into his amethyst eyes. He was driving home from a student council meeting that finished late. Even if he was only a second-year student, he was already president of the student council. Even now, he would rule over everyone. As he stared out the window, he came to admire the colors that came with the changing of the day. The rosy pink that was fading from the flaming orange of the day into the dark indigo of the night truly enraptured his visual senses. He couldn't help but think back to a certain hair-colored girl with favorite colored dye tips. Whenever he came to admire the colorful views he would lay his eyes upon, he would feel conflicted. This was because he knew that if he hadn't met that girl, Ellen, his world would still be gray. Hwan sat at her desk, bored. Her soulmate sat at a desk diagonally in front of her left side. She was in the front second row, while he was in the front row. Sometimes it was tempting to throw a paper ball at him out of spite, but Hwan knew better than that. Soon, their English teacher, Miwa Matsui, walked into the class and began. For the next few weeks, you will be doing something a bit different, the black-haired woman announced with a sparkle in her azure eyes. I'm sure all of you know that as students who take advanced English, you'll learn differently compared to my other classes. Hwan perked up at the sound of that. While she was good at other subjects, her favorite was English. As Miwa continued, she picked up a stack of books from underneath the teacher's podium. We'll be reading Shakespeare, which is a whole different version of English compared to what you've been learning. Hwan sat up straighter, intrigued for this lesson. When she was 8, before her parents died, she would go through her mother's collection of English books and attempt to read them. Her mother would catch her snooping through them. Instead of scolding her, she would read them to her and help her understand. That book collection included some of Shakespeare's work. She was young, so she didn't really understand the morals of any of the plays, but she enjoyed the bonding moments she would have with her mother. On the other hand, Gakushu diligently paid attention. However, he wasn't as excited as Hwan. He had already read the majority of Shakespeare's works, so he had a feeling that this assignment wouldn't be too hard. You'll have the next month and a half to read the book I've chosen. Miwa continued. I'm giving you that much time because I know some of you love to procrastinate. She pointed a look to Hwan's black-haired friend, Seiji Nagayo. Hwan and her brunette friend, Kyo Takada, snickered at him, making Seiji frown. You've probably already heard this one, but it's Romeo and Juliet, Miwa announced. Hwan's shoulders slumped and Gakushu held back an eye roll. Of course it's Romeo and Juliet, they both thought. Hwan was no longer interested. She had a very cynical opinion on that story. Despite having read it multiple times, she thought that the star-crossed lovers were astronomically stupid. Love at first sight is for idiots. She rolled her eyes at the thought of Romeo and Juliet falling in love at first sight at the Capulet party. Romeo was a clown, and Juliet was just so painfully naive, to the point that Wyan wanted to hit herself with a book every time she read it. You'll be split up into groups of 2. Miwa was interrupted by the sound of people already picking their partners. Wyan glanced at Cœï, who stared right back at her with a smirk. Miwa cleared her throat. Ahem. Group said, I have already chosen for you. An echo of groans and sighs resounded through the classroom. Wyan and Cœï pouted, looking back to their teacher. As I was saying, you'll be split up into groups of 2 to read said book, Miwa continued. Sometimes it's better when 2 minds are put together in order to comprehend something. This is in Shakespearean English. Therefore, it will be different. I want you all to be thoroughly taking notes while reading this and turn those in. You and your partner will have a month and a half to give me 8 pages worth of notes, meaning 4 pages for each person. Individually, I want a paragraph on what your opinion is on the story. One classmate raised their hand. Why so much time? Well, knowing myself, I'd be too lazy to grade your papers in the next week. Unless if you want less time, Miwa snickered. I'd be happy to give you less. Dude, shut up.
Ow, hey.
His friend slapped him on the shoulder. Sorry, that's enough time, never mind. He hastily waved his hands around. Are there any other questions? Miwa asked. After a few seconds of silence, she brought out a list. Here are the books. Take one and pass, please. Wyan inwardly questioned. What if you already own the book? Then she noticed that it was a different version of the book that had side notes explaining certain phrases in the book. I guess it wouldn't hurt if I were to use this one then. Does everyone have a book? Remember, if something happens to your copy, you'll have to pay for it since it's the school's property. Miwa reminded and took out a list. Let's start with the first pair. Takara and Nagaoi. Wyan sighed in her seat as both of her friends gave her a sympathetic smile. Next group. Asano and Ellen. Both flinched, but didn't bother to look over at each other. Wyan let out another sigh and leaned back in her seat. Cœï and Seiji snickered at their poor friend. R.I.P. Wyan. She gave them a sarcastic smile. Hi. So I decided to end it here because I have decided that I will not burn myself out for this. It is the the holiday for me. This also, it's just a really long chapter. I think I'm like halfway through. So this is like I stopped at the halfway point. Please expect another video, like part 2 of this chapter, to come out tomorrow or the day after. Because I also want to set goals for myself. And even though I never follow through, I'm trying my best. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this. Have an amazing morning, have an amazing evening, have an amazing afternoon whenever you're listening to this. And, yeah. Goodbye, everyone.